Well, I was really, really fortunate. In grade 12, I was taking an art class, and this very small high school in northwest Calgary, Queen Elizabeth, had a kiln and an art teacher that knew how to use it. So I was introduced to throwing, and I was just totally seduced to the process on the wheel. And I just, oh, this is fantastic. So I hand-built, I didn't really have my own wheel after that, for about a year after that, and continued on to University of Calgary and started my BA, but I still wanted to get into the art department. And at that time, I didn't believe that an artist could make a living or make money at it, so I just wanted to do it part-time. And I came away with having been in the ceramic department for a couple of years with a minor in fine arts, and I learned how to throw and mix glazes, and was just really, really loved it. So I moved out to Vancouver, and this was 75, and someone introduced me, a friend, to Richard Hoffman. And Richard was a full-on production potter, and there's a picture over here of the amount of work that we were cranking out of that studio. And that was in a warehouse on Granville Island, and they were just beginning to dredge around Granville Island. They've created it into a beautiful market now, but then there was the chain forge and the cement factory, and it was really an industrial site right in the middle of the city, and that's where I really got a lot of experience. Richard was remarkable. The amount of effort and work that went into his work demonstrated to me if you worked really hard, you could, produce some work that you could actually gain revenue from. So I was able to produce work that it was kind of like an apprenticeship situation. I would be able to do things for him, trimming and mixing glazes, and then I would be able to get all my materials and firing for free. So whatever I could make, I could sell. And that was the 70s, and everyone was buying pottery, so it worked out quite nicely. And even though it seemed like everyone was making pottery as well, there were so many of us there. And stayed there for a couple of years, and then got together with two other ladies, and we started our own studio, built a kiln. And looking back, I kind of wonder that we did that.
This was in Burnaby?
That was in Burnaby, in a building in Deer Lake. Built it was a 60 cubic foot kiln, and just pieced it together, did a little bit of welding and putting it all together, and we worked there. And one of the girls was associated with a store called the Stone Pony on West 4th in Kitsilano, so we had an outlet and roared along, just having a great time in a way, producing pottery. And so all this experience really entrenched me into the craft. And then I finally moved out up to Whistler, and had another kiln siting there. I bought a small kiln and had it on the side of Whistler Mountain, right outside a cabin that we rented there.
Can you tell us a little bit about that cabin?
Well, this I don't know if anybody remembers Alex Bunbury, but this cabin was up the Microwave Road. So in the winter we could drive up that, and it's just on a shoulder on the south side of Whistler Mountain. Just sort of around the corner from Franz's Run. And you can still see above the subdivision this red cabin up there. And then in the winter we'd have to walk up the hill to get home. And I learned how to made a cement pad to put the kiln on, and got one of those great big giant tanks brought up there for my propane. It was a gas-fired kiln. I do high-fire gas firings, and so I needed that. And it's kind of funny, all these years I've moved around so many times and built kilns here and there. So I was there for 3 years in Whistler. And then we moved to Pemberton, and that's my favorite studio that I had there on Guthrie Road. And had my little kiln there. And there is kind of a funny story. I really learned to respect and appreciate wind. I was always fascinated that Pemberton didn't have wind power, because it seemed to rip through the valley at times, and I was firing my kiln. We had a little tin shed over top of one of these garden sheds that the kiln was in, and the wind came up. I was in my little studio building, and I heard this horrendous noise, and I came out the door and turned around the corner, and there was my kiln. It had been firing for a glaze load, so it was getting pretty good temperature. The kiln shed had lifted up and picked up just the lid arm off the top ring of the kiln. The kiln was a small stacking, so there were different rings, and the top ring and the lid came somehow flying off quite nicely. The kiln shed was across the yard upside down. The top of the kiln and the lid was upside down beside the kiln, and there was this torch of flame that was produced from the 6 burners at the bottom of the kiln, and all my ware standing completely untouched, completely just a black silhouette of vases and things. And it was just the most, your kiln is taken apart. It was just totally exposed. So it was, I've been terrified of the wind ever since, as you can imagine. Whenever it starts to blow, I think, okay, what's tied down, what's not tied down? So I turned off the kiln and put the kiln shed, or the kiln ring back on top and lit it again, and the firing was completed. But I'll never forget that. We anchored the kiln shed after that quite nicely. It was tied down pretty well after that. But it was just one of those fortunate things. But all this experience has really been a wonderful life endeavor. The process and the involvement with clay and seeing what can come out. Most of the time I tell people I make functional pottery. I want people to use it. I make a few pieces that are just for display or some crazy odd things, but I really have focused on work that people can use and bringing art into the functional aspect of daily domestic use. It's something that I keep going back to, and I think it's the actual medium itself. I love throwing. The process of making something on the wheel, turning a lump of clay within 10 minutes into a shape is something that's really, I guess, just stuck with me. It's still a wonderful experience, just the excitement of being able to do that. And then the last aspect of the firing, when you can see what the glaze results, what the fire will produce in different colors and different effects, it still is the attraction.
I guess it's the final mystery. No matter how much pottery you do, you never know what the glaze will look like until that final firing.
I don't have thermocouples or computers or electronic. The things we buy in stores, that factory produced ware, that's either stoneware or medium fired ware or porcelain, it's mechanical. There are lots of, they have to be very sure of what the firings produce and it's consistent. So they have now computers and all sorts of technical equipment, and I still look through a peephole at pyrometric cones, which are little spiky things that each one melts at a different temperature, and you look through and want to see them bending over as the fire progresses. So that part is still a bit of an art form and takes a fair bit of experience in knowing your kiln and to get the results you want. And I tell people, even after, 30 plus years of firing and mixing glazes, I'm still just scratching the surface. There's been so much created over the eons, from the early Chinese dynasties to present day, that different glazes and different effects.
I've heard from people that come looking for your wares at the shop that it's, for them, it's always seems to be about the glazes.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody was recently saying that there's just nothing like Meg's glazes, that she'd been purchasing your stuff for many years and had really enjoyed the progression of your use of the glazes.
Oh, I love the sound of that. That's terrific. That's rewarding. I was thinking about this in preparation for coming here to speak to you, and I think the connection with people that I've had over the years and getting their feedback, and that is very rewarding, and enjoying their ideas that they put forward of things that I should make, and the colors that people like. It's over the years, the firings and the glazes, they change subtly, and then I decide to do new combinations of things and exploring the results. So, like I say, it's an endless possibilities, for sure. I really enjoy that.